Good morning. My name is Priscilla. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm so glad to be bringing the message to you this morning. Our first reading, we always choose a non-biblical passage, and this morning that's going to come from a book called Gold, which is poetry by Rumi, translated by Haile Liza Ghaffori. Leave your tricks and schemes behind. Go mad with love like a moth hungry for light. Dive into the blazing heart of the flame. Be a stranger to yourself. Wreck the house you call self. Wake up in love's house. Live with lovers. Be a lover. Why lie in a grave fearing judgment? Hands idle. You have a role at this feast. Rise up, open your arms, a haven. Grudges and spite weigh on the heart. Let 7 streams of water wash them away. Make room for love's wine. Be its cup. Thoughts stray and drag you with them. Heart, leap over your head, arrive before you know it. You're not a book bound to 2 directions. You're not a pawn, crooked queen, a short-sighted king. Be a mirror for your beloved. Reflect what you adore. Once mineral, then animal, now blessed with a soul. Be love. Preacher, how long will you rant door to door, roof to roof? Give your jaw a rest. Be silence. We're going to let you take that rest today. Our scripture reading this morning comes from Psalm 98. Sing to the Lord a new song, for she has done marvelous things. Her right hand and her holy arm have worked salvation for her. The Lord has made his salvation known and revealed his righteousness to the nations. He has remembered his love and his faithfulness to Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music. Make music to the Lord with the harp and the sound of singing, with trumpets and the blast of the ram's horn. Shout for joy before the Lord, the Queen. Let the sea resound and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Let them sing before the Lord, for she comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples with equity. The phrase, sing to the Lord a new song, has captured my imagination. It shows up 5 times in Psalms, once in Isaiah, twice in Revelations. When we hear this instruction, we understand it to be a call to praise. It's usually followed by God's resume. You know, the section labeled skills and abilities. Great and marvelous are your deeds, Lord Almighty. Just and true are your ways, King of the ages. All right, settle down, you got the job. And now we are observing your on-the-job performance like you're observing ours. And the only way to properly give meaningful feedback, for good or bad, seems to be through couplets, stanzas, and verses. This particular biblical passage seems to be saying that the only proper response to the way God shows up is to shout for joy, in contrast with other biblical passages which leave more room for laments. And apparently, singing a song of praise is not enough. We ought to not just sing, but sing a new song. This position seems to demand freshness, creativity, and the utmost enthusiasm. Is that how you've been showing up in your communication with the divine? Me neither. I think we should spend some time trying to determine what it means to sing to the Lord a new song, and I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all approach. As we try to solve this jigsaw together, I offer up a puzzle piece that might help. The podcast No Small Endeavor, which I've quoted before, created a 3-part series asking The question originally posed by Christian Weinman in his beautiful memoir, My Bright Abyss. In it, he asked the question, what is poetry's role when the world is burning? Maybe our song is falling short because we can't see past the flames. We're having trouble being innovative in our response to God because we can't breathe for all the smoke filling our lungs. Enthusiastic praise hardly seems appropriate given the state of things. We're living through wars, climate collapse, collective burnout, and political fragmentation. None of us knows what to make of the AI takeover, and in the US, we're literally scrambling to figure out how to feed and provide healthcare for millions of Americans, all while grasping a tight hold on a democracy that we thought was sturdy and robust, but it turns out it's more like a porcelain doll. Maybe poetry can help us sing a new song. In the podcast series, the host interviews 3 renowned poets, Joy Harjo, Padre Gotuma, and Haile Liza Ghaffori, whose life's work is dedicated to translating the poetry of Rumi, written 800 years ago. 3-term poet laureate Joy Harjo of the Muscogee Creek Nation contends that poetry is not luxury or escape. It is ritual, ceremony, language of the sacred, a way to speak to the soul and open space for listening and for transformation. That description makes the case for prayer and poetry being synonymous. Listen again, it's ritual, ceremony, language of the sacred, a way to speak to the soul and open space for listening and transformation. When Harjo was asked to answer the question we're centering today, she responded this way: maybe the world is always burning. Certainly right now, we're at quite a crisis of magnitude. She says, I think of Krakatoa and the volcanic eruption and plagues and dictators that rise up and fall down. We're in quite a mess right now. When I'm with Native people, we say, well, we've been through this before and we'll still be here after. Next in the lineup, we turn to the wisdom of Padre Gotuma. He reflects on growing up Catholic and gay in 1980s in Ireland and the complex legacy of faith, repression, and language that he inherited. He shares how poetry helped him reclaim agency and reframe pain. He speaks of how the art of noticing becomes a form of resistance and self-improvement. When Padraig is faced with the question, what is poetry's role when the world is burning? He reminds us that art is made by people from all cultures and in all kinds of circumstances. He says sometimes it's part of the grief, and sometimes it's part of the survival, and sometimes it's written by people who are part of the problem. In the interview, the host asked Otuma to further unpack this concept that he refers to, the art of noticing. Here is his response. With any practice of paying attention, mine happens to be poetry, but for other people, it might be 10 minutes of silence, it might be a particular walk, or it can be all kinds of practices of prayer or meditation. I think anything that holds you steady just becomes a daily linchpin for returning to a place from which you can analyze what else is happening and what kind of practice can make a big difference in our life. Some people only have a few minutes while the coffee is brewing. If you can take that, that's great. Any practice like that can be a huge help for setting aside distraction about the voices inside of our heads that say things like, be angry about this, be happy at this, be anxious about this, be worried about this. Compare yourself to this. What is the thing that steadies you? Padre Gotuma is encouraging you to engage in spiritual practices to support the act of noticing. As much as he worships poetry, he also insists that while it's a nice idea to think that lofty words are followed by lofty action, that's not always the case. Like Joy Harjo, he often conflates poetry and prayer. He quotes another beloved poet, Mary Oliver, who says, "I know a lot of fancy words. I tear them from my tongue and then I pray." Haile Liza Ghafouri is a poet, musician, and translator. She says this about her first encounter with the Sufi poet Rumi. "I was born in New York City, and when my parents came from Iran in the 70s, they had one suitcase of clothing and 2 suitcases of books." She describes hearing her father recite Rumi's poetry in these gatherings that they'd host at their house called Shave She'er, which means Night of Poetry, where friends would gather once a month and recite poems. I could see Chestnut Hill United experimenting with this practice. We certainly have our share of poets and lovers of poetry. Ghafouri says this of Rumi: "When he calls upon us to feel this love within ourselves, it is then also for us to turn around and apply it in the world." When Ghafouri is posed with our central question, she responds with a question of her own: why is the world burning? There are many answers, but one that she lifts up is irreverence for life. She speaks of decision after decision that doesn't have at its foundation the recognition of our interdependence. Poetry tries to bring us to the present moment. It tries to remind us to use our 5 senses, to notice things. Some poetry reminds us to praise, invites us to recognize our interconnection, invites us to feel these disasters and plain old human emotions of utter and complete fear and greed. Haile Liza Ghafouri shares that as a child and adolescent, she had an intense anxiety disorder. She remembers reading a line from Rumi, remember, 800 years ago, that says, "Exit the tangles of fear thinking." And she thought to herself, you can do that? Sing to the Lord a new song seems to be a call for us to put away some of our old ways. I have been reading Rumi's poetry every morning to start my day. For me, it's become the daily linchpin that Padre Gotuma spoke of that I engage in while the coffee is brewing. His poetry implores me to sing to the Lord a new song. It beckons me to ecstasy and then to transmute it into action. When he says things like, "Whatever the ways of the world, what fruits do you bring?" Or, "Don't think, quit pouring thoughts like kerosene on everything fresh and green, burning it to the root, be a fool, drunk in love, soaked in awe, till dry reed are sweet as sugarcane." So what is the role of poetry, of prayer, of singing the Lord a new song when the world is burning? It's the language of the sacred, a way to speak to the soul and open space for listening and for transformation. It's a reminder that we've been through this before and will still be here after. Poetry is sometimes part of the grief, sometimes part of the survival. It's the art of noticing. Poetry and singing a new song is about feeling the love within ourselves and figuring out how to apply it in the world, especially to overcome fear and greed all around us. Singing a new song might just help us exit the tangles of our fear thinking. If you can't sing to the Lord a new song or find the right words for a prayer, just maybe you can read a poem out loud as an offering to God. For me, the role of poetry when the world is burning is to remind me of the depths of my feelings. It stirs up proof that I am not apathetic to the burning. Even if trying to douse a raging fire with my few droplets of water often seem pointless, my sprinkling matters, your sprinkling matters, and when we combine our efforts, our solutions become so much more powerful. As Rumi puts it, "For you are wrapped and entwined in love." Let us sing to the Lord a new song even while the world burns, especially because the world is burning. Leave your tricks and schemes behind, go mad with love. Like a moth hungry for light, dive into the blazing heart of the flame. Shout for joy to the Lord. Burst into jubilant song with music. This is God's good news. Amen.